Everyone is applying for a job in 2026, but nobody is hiring them. In this video, I want to talk about 5 different things that are related to the brutal reality of trying to find and apply for a job in 2026. The first thing is called the daily job hunt loop. Second is that entry level jobs don't feel entry level anymore. Third thing is that universities feel like factories that just pump out new grads every single year. Fourth is the psychological effects that nobody talks about when applying for a job and constantly being rejected. The last thing and the fifth thing is the bigger realization, and the realization that applying for these types of jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed is not the way of the future. There has to be something different. There has to be something else that we work towards because the current system isn't working as well as it used to. So to start off the video, I'm going to talk about the daily job hunt loop. So this is basically about the fact that there's so many people in America and Canada and other Western countries that every single day they wake up and the first thing that they tend to do is go to LinkedIn, Indeed, and see if there's any jobs that are out there that they can apply for. And this applies to people who have just graduated. This applies to people who have been laid off and are trying to find a new job to apply to. Or it could just be somebody who hasn't graduated yet, but is just kind of looking in the market and seeing what jobs are out there for them to apply once they graduate. And that alone is just so exhausting because when you do see a certain job that, is related to the field that you studied for, chances are pretty high that somebody else, or sorry, at least 100 plus people have applied for that job already. So sometimes on LinkedIn, when you check the actual job, on the top right or top left somewhere, it'll say how many people have applied for it. And it'll say 100 plus, but because it has that plus, LinkedIn won't show any more applicants than 100. So even if there's 1,000 or 500 applicants that have applied for that job, LinkedIn will just say 100 plus applicants. So that alone right there is pretty misleading as it is because you're not sure if, 100 people have applied, 150 have applied, or if 2,000 people have applied. And chances are pretty high that if it's a pretty popular job that's directly related to your field that you're studying for, chances are pretty high that at least double that, like double 100, like double than 100 people have applied for that job. So I'm talking at least, a few hundred people. And when you do decide to apply for those jobs, whether you do that through LinkedIn or Indeed or Monster, I think that was a thing back in my day when I was applying for a job. Um, or if you apply through the company website, let's say you somehow managed to apply for, I don't know, 15 to 20 jobs every single day. After about a week, that's around 100 to 140 different jobs. If you keep doing that week after week and you don't hear back anything, which is the case for a lot of people nowadays, they don't hear anything back even after applying for 150 jobs. When you don't hear back, it becomes, first of all, you start to doubt your abilities because you start to think that maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe my skills aren't the best, or maybe my resume sucks and I don't have the right experience. So you start to doubt yourself and you start to doubt your abilities, which isn't good because we don't want to be putting ourselves down for no reason, right? And on top of this, what the biggest thing that's demotivating to me when I see all these new grads trying to apply for jobs is the fact that they write their resumes with AI. Not all of them, but some of them do, and their cover letters are also written by AI. And what happens is when you apply for a job with a resume and a cover letter, chances are pretty high that if you're applying to a company that's really big or that's part of the S&P 500, um, more often than not, an ATS system will be used to filter and sort and rank your resume. Now, an ATS system is basically stands for an applicant tracking system. So it's a company's AI system, an AI system that tracks and ranks all the resumes for a specific job posting that is posted by the company. And so this makes the job of the actual people that work in that company really easy, especially for HR, because they're the ones that are usually posting these job postings out there. And so the chances of an actual human being seeing your physical resume and your actual cover letter are so low that it's like winning the lottery at this point, when it comes to finding a job. The second point is entry level jobs don't feel entry level. When I was applying for jobs right after I graduated, if you guys don't know, it took me about 10 months to land a full time job. And I graduated from university in June of 2024. So back then, the job market was still pretty messed up. It was still difficult to find a job. But I had actually done an internship a couple years back, and that manager that I had in that internship really liked me a lot. And she decided to, like, right after I finished that internship and went back to school, um, one person on their team actually left the company, and then as a result of that, she remembered me and that I interned with her. So she ended up calling me back to the company, and she said that we have an extra spot available, and we're trying to fill somebody as fast as we can within that position. And then she was like, because you already have that experience within this company and within that specific role, we would like to hire you back. And so for me, it was pretty easy to get that job just because I had that referral and I knew that person within that company. But I remember during those 10 months when I was applying for jobs right after graduating, I would see so many different entry level positions within finance, and almost all of them had at least a bare minimum of 3 to 5 years of experience. And this wasn't just internship experience, this was like actual full time experience. And so a lot of the positions would say 3 years of full time experience needed. And then I was like, well, I know some friends that have 2 to 3 years of internship experience, and I personally had 1 year of internship experience, and that they wouldn't qualify. Like none of them would qualify just because their position, or sorry, their experience was based on an internship, which just sucks because an internship and a full time role is this kind of, in my opinion, it's the same thing. You just get hired, you just get paid less. You get paid less amount of money, but more often than not, some interns are doing the responsibilities of full time employees. So that's just kind of messed up, in my opinion. Um, and at the same time, so many companies want all of these different certifications. Like they want the CFA, they want people who have their CPA, and they want so much volunteer experience. And it's like it becomes really hard to compete with so many different people that are competing against you, and it's kind of overwhelming. Um, and on top of all this, when I was applying for jobs, I realized that just because I have a degree, that alone does not guarantee me an interview. And that was the case because I wasn't getting any interviews. In total, during that 10-month period, I think I had applied to about 450 different jobs, or around 500 different jobs, before eventually my manager from that internship reached out to me. But with those 500 applications that I sent off before getting employed, I only heard back from, I think, 3 different companies, and I only went in for one physical interview in real life, and one was online. And one of them was, I think, like an online interview where you record your face and you kind of like answer a few questions that the company gives you. So even then, you're not really talking to an actual person. And I think one was like a phone call, but that didn't go anywhere, so that was kind of pointless. Um, so yeah, it's just depressing how if you have a degree, that does not guarantee you an interview or a job by itself. And then because so many new entry level positions require all these years of experience, it's like I started to think to myself, like, how the heck are new grads supposed to even gain that experience if getting a job requires experience, right? Like you to get a job, you need experience, but to have experience, you need a job, right? And if you can't get a job, you can't get experience, and then it's like this vicious loop that just repeats over and over again, and it kind of just becomes impossible to find a job, especially if you want one in the specific field that you studied for. Third thing is that universities feel like factories. So universities, colleges, diploma centers, all of these places just feel like industrial factories that are just pumping out new grads every single year, and the supply of new grads is increasing every single year, even though the demand for jobs is pretty much staying the same, if not trending lower. I think I saw somewhere, I think my friend showed a chart to me where it was basically a chart of the amount of jobs that have been posted or that have been coming out every single month since 2022. And it goes by month, so it'll have all the way from January to December. And I think at the start of 2022, there were around 700,000 jobs being posted every single month, like coming out. And this chart was specific to the US, so I can't really speak to Canada, which is where I'm from. But every single month there were, 700,000 jobs, and the next month there was like 725,000 jobs. And over the years, like as 2023 came, I think the number of jobs per month went down to like 500,000. And then eventually 2024 happened, 2025. And now that we're in 2026, I think it's all the way down to like 50,000 new jobs every single month that are available and that are coming out. But obviously, as years go by, there's more and more new grads that graduate every single year. Looking back when before I graduated, like a decade before I graduated, I think the number of people that would graduate with degrees was like half the amount of when I graduated. And so I can only assume that right now, in 2026, the amount of people that graduate is way more than when I graduated. And so if there's all these people that are graduating every single year from these industrial factories that we call universities, and the jobs that are available and that are being posted are constant and not increasing, then the unemployment rate is going to go up, and no wonder no one's getting a job, because if the supply is so much and demand is so little, only the best of the absolute best will get these jobs, and they'll be paid quite well. But like I said again, not everybody will get these jobs because only the best people will get them, just because supply is so high. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if the supply of new grads is way too much every single year, but the demand for jobs is pretty much staying the exact same as it has been for the past years, if not going down, then each single new grad that graduates is pretty much worth less than the new grad that graduated the year before. And because of that, there's so much competition. The companies that are posting these job positions have the power. They have the power to choose the best candidate that's available within a pool of hundreds of thousands of candidates, right? So that becomes depressing and demotivating, where you don't want to apply for a job anymore because you already know that you're going to get singled out and you're not going to be able to get a job because there's so much competition and the value of each new grad is worth less. And it's like, no wonder all these companies are asking for 3 to 5 years of experience. It's not because new entry level positions require 3 to 5 years of experience. It's just that they can get somebody who has a lot of experience and pay as little money as possible for that person, just because they have the power, just because they know that the supply of new grads is so much, but jobs are few and in between. The fourth thing I want to talk about is the psychological effect that nobody talks about. So when all of these new grads are applying for jobs and being constantly rejected, don't you think that that's going to make them feel worthless? That's going to make them feel like they're not good enough, that they don't have the right abilities to be able to have a good career. They don't have the ability to actually network, or they don't have the ability to go out there and communicate properly, and feel bad about themselves, right? They're gonna feel bad about themselves. And do we want an entire generation to feel like shit and to feel like they're worthless and that they can't contribute anything to society? Because I feel like if so many people feel like they can't contribute anything to society, then what's going to happen is we're going to have all of these different people that are graduating who are going to have mental health problems, because they're either going to develop some kind of anxiety disorder, some kind of depressive disorder, or they're going to develop some other mental disorder that's related to the fact that they're being constantly rejected, and it's having a psychological impact on their mental health. And there's no cure for that, because I guess the only cure for that would be the fact that you apply for a job and you actually hear back, and people say, oh, your resume was pretty nice, I want to get to know you more, I want to interview you. But people aren't getting that validation anymore. And because all these new grads aren't getting that validation, they are just mentally drained and mentally doubting themselves and their abilities and capabilities. And so for a lot of them, I feel like they're just not even applying for jobs anymore because they realize that it's just making their mental health worse and worse. And so they don't really see the point of applying for all these jobs. Um, Especially if a lot of them nowadays live with their parents. They're probably in their early 20s and thinking to themselves, I could probably just stay with my family for a few more years and kind of see how things work out later on. Which, to be fair, that's a good idea, especially given all the prices of houses nowadays. And don't even get me started on how expensive everything is as it is. So that's a whole other topic that I could talk about in the future. Um, but to build on this topic more, like the psychological effects, it's not just the fact that you apply for a job and you don't hear back and it makes you feel like crap. It's the fact that your friends, your families, everybody that you kind of know in life and that's close to you, they'll know that you graduated because obviously you'll tell people that you've graduated, or you'll post a picture on Instagram or whatever that you graduated, and they'll see you. They'll ask you all the time. How's the job hunt going? Did you get a job yet? Or have you found a job yet? You studied for 4 years, you did your college degree. What job are you working at? And when they ask you these questions, obviously you're going to reply back by saying, no, I haven't found a job yet. I'm still looking. And saying that out loud alone is just, it's hurtful. Like it hurts yourself, right? Because it hurts you because you're not lazy. We know that we're not lazy. We just can't find a job, and it's embarrassing, right? Because people think that you were so smart and you were so intelligent that you got a high GPA in university, and now it's like you're just failing everybody. It feels like you're failing your parents, you're failing your family, your friends. It's like you have nothing to show for. You'd have nothing to show for the degree that you spent 4 years painlessly trying to finish and complete. All those quizzes and all those exams and graduating just to end up being unemployed and not able to find a job, like thousands of and hundreds of thousands of other people. So it's just embarrassing. You have these feelings of embarrassment and disappointment within yourself. And yeah, the feeling of disappointment it just kind of never goes away. And yeah, you just feel mentally drained from all this. And, I felt the same way as well. I just felt like a piece of shit for just staying at home and not even able to get a job. Like, my parents would look at me and they would just think to themselves, like, why isn't our son, like working a job yet? It's like, to them, in their eyes, they thought I was lazy. They thought I was just not trying hard enough. And maybe that's why I wasn't getting a job. But, little did they know that it's just really hard to get a job nowadays. Last thing I want to touch on is the bigger realization of all of this. I think over time, as this job market persists and keeps going on, people are realizing that the system they were told to trust and grow up into does not work anymore. We have to understand why so many young people feel lost, burnt out, and disconnected. It's like applying for jobs and not getting them has just become like an endless cycle of applying, waiting, and repeating over and over again without seeing any fruits of your labor. It's like you're doing all this for what? It seems pointless at the end of the day, right? And once people start questioning this, and when they start questioning the fact that, are they even living anymore? Are they just trying to survive financially by applying for this job? Once people start questioning that, then we're going to see change. Then we're going to see people move on from applying to these stupid corporate jobs and these office jobs and move on to start doing things for themselves. Whether that's moving away to a different country where things are cheaper, whether that's starting a business, or whether that's starting your own company and hiring your own people, right? It's like you could do anything. And once people realize that this system is broken, that's when real change happens. And that's when we start to move away from LinkedIn and move away from Indeed and change the system completely, to the point where when we have kids ourselves, we're going to tell our kids to, yeah, you can go to college and, do your 4-year degree in whatever, finance, accounting, engineering, whatever you want to do. But there's also this other path that you can take, which not many people have taken in the past, but nowadays a lot of people are taking. So these are just kind of my thoughts on the job market in 2026 and how brutal the reality of it is. And I hope you guys can relate to this message. I hope you guys, can feel the impact of what I'm saying. And that's pretty much it. Peace out.